everyone. Welcome to Heart in the Hand Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy Bell. I'm your host as always. And it's a pleasure to be talking to you, but it's a real rare pleasure for me to be talking to my guest this week, which is not one of our regular visitors here on Extra Corner, and that is Stuart McCall. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. As I say, it's rare that your schedule allows a chance for us to be able to get together, but it's great to talk to you about all things Rangers.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I thought I would show my face, business end of the season and stuff, and I
A
start
bit
getting
like a very tall Northern Irish striker who used to play for Rangers that frankly you could just rely upon in the closing stages of the season.
very, very much so, and I would love to have him from sort of March through to May this season because he would probably shoot us towards the title with his goals. But no, yeah, I'm delighted to be on and talking all things Rangers after a good weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And in one of those rare occurrences, sure, we haven't had a midweek game to be able to talk about. Huge benefits there, obviously, for the manager and the players to get some time on the training ground. Breaks the schedule up a little bit as well, which is, as I say, which is nice, allowing a wee bit of recovery time to come in. But I do want to talk to you about, I think, what we can all agree on was a epic performance and result last Sunday at Ibrox as Rangers stood up to the task. I think it's fair to say when we took on top of the table Hearts and came away with a 4-2 victory. A victory which on paper you might say, well, that looked fairly straightforward. However, it was anything but Rangers having to come back twice and then go in front and then seal it off with a fantastic move. And I'm going to take this opportunity with you on Extra this week, Stuart, to get your thoughts on that game. And I want to talk to you about a couple of players, the new signings, and also, most importantly, how confident you're feeling about the rest of the season. And we'll touch on to Livingston on Sunday as well.
Mhm.
So how are you feeling on Sunday afternoon?
I think it was it had been a disappointing sort of couple of weeks with the draw at Easter Road and the draw at Firth Park. Of course, we had a bit of call it a body blow after Celtic scored in the last minute winner at Rugby Park. But so going into it, I was kind of the same as everybody else, whereas I felt as though we had to win it. I felt as though we couldn't lose it, or our title push was going to pretty much be gone. So I had that kind of big game feeling about it. And it was a brilliant game. It really was entertaining, really open. I was impressed with a couple of players that Hearts have got. I've been impressed with them all season, but I felt it was a real question of ourselves. I thought the crowd was so good on Sunday. I thought everybody was. It's the closest I've felt the crowd and the players all season. Obviously, there's not been a lot to shout about this season, but I did really feel as though there was a synergy. Even when we went behind, I think David mentioned it on the flagship that there was a sort of a roll after the first goal. And yeah, I felt confident. I still felt confident through the game, even when we were behind, because there was that expectation, and it's one of the ones where we, as I said, we kind of had to win. So it was sort of do or die. And yeah, listen, some players had to step up. They had to shine through, and they did do that throughout the team. So I was delighted. I think it doesn't necessarily change anything in terms of putting us ahead in regards to being the favourites, but it certainly keeps us in the mix, and that's hugely important getting into what's going to be. Of course, we've come up to this weekend. We'll discuss that, but further ahead, there's going to be a lot bigger games, and we couldn't get ourselves cut adrift. So delighted with the result. Of course, it was a great atmosphere, and we did deserve it. I think I watched it back. Hearts did play well, I thought at times, but ultimately we were the best team, and we were good for our victory. And it would have been, I don't think it'd have been fair if Hearts had nicked something at the end before we got the fourth. So all in all, we can't really complain with getting that victory.
Yeah, and I spoke about it last week on Extra, where we talk about a lot in terms of fine margins, and obviously for title run-ins, and it's going to get like that. This is a 3-horse race, which obviously we haven't even been involved in a title race for too long. Even the last time we did win a title, it was kind of done with acres to spare. So it is going to feel like this week on week. But the reason as to why I kind of mention it again was because when you look at and we do have to look at other teams, right? So I'm sorry this is a Rangers podcast, but we do have to talk about those around us and what that can impact because we were gutted at, Fir Park because Hearts got a last-minute winner in Edinburgh Derby on the Tuesday night, and then Celtic were able to scrape a victory at home to Livingston. We dropped points at Fir Park. And thereafter, you go to Sunday, and Kilmarnock looked up and cruising. You know, they were 2-0 up. They didn't have too much of a bother. And then obviously Celtic scored, I think, just about a week after the game was due to finish. And so you watch that, and then you're either watching it or you're listening to it in the car as you're heading across the Ibrox, and you're thinking, shit, that would have been a good opportunity to put in it. But that, I think, what's really interesting when we talk about that atmosphere would have been that the manner in which we lost some of the goals against Hearts. I think that I've seen Rangers crowds in the past get so incredibly frustrated, and some of that frustration is kind of well sitting there before a whistle is blown. But what I think we've all kind of said through various shows, Flagship and on our Patreon site, was the crowd were absolutely fantastic to not allow that frustration to bleed onto the park. And again, like you say, you're pulling your hair out when you look at players not even talking to each other when they should be passing the ball, and then Hearts can run through and capitalise on it. But Rangers kept going and the fans kept going, Stuart, which I think was kind of key. I'll be honest with you, well done to whoever is putting Yusuf Chermiti on for a hat trick. I hope you've rinsed the bookies dry, as they say. But Rangers had to respond. That was what was most important. And I mean respond not just in terms of after Fir Park, but after Celtic when it Kilmarnock, being able to take on Hearts, who have been in good form. The league table does not lie, right? Let's get that down there. I'm like you. There's quite a few of the Hearts players who impress me.
Yeah.
But Rangers had to respond, but the fans had to respond. And I think that you've captured it perfectly by saying that synergy, that togetherness between the support and the team. I think that's been at its pinnacle last Sunday across the course of all season.
Yeah, it's a weird one because for anybody that knows me and sits beside me, I am a pretty nervous guy to sit beside in the stadium. And the game against Dundee, for example, a couple of weeks ago, or even Kilmarnock last midweek, when we weren't playing that well in the games, maybe the first half, and there was a nervousness around about the stadium. And it wasn't until we maybe got the second goal that everybody kind of relaxed a wee bit. I was much more nervous during those two games than I was during the Hearts game, which is funny because it's maybe a case of, well, if it goes to shit today, then that's it. And I think I felt that through the crowd really. At the start, maybe there was an element of disappointment after the result filtered through from Rugby Park, but I think we quickly moved on. And yeah, it's important. And I think Derek McKinnon spoke about it after the game as well. He mentioned it about the Rangers fans gave a lot to the players and they fed off that. And it's funny, you think about it through the years. There's so many of our players that would have experienced good European nights and have heard it under the lights. And it may have got them more accustomed to those sort of atmospheres, whereas a lot of the players, especially the new ones through the summer, and that haven't really experienced a big atmosphere at Ibrox. The Old Firm game at the start of the season wasn't much to that. The European campaign's been really disappointing. So, as I said, that one on Sunday felt like the biggest atmosphere we've had in a long time. So, and the fact that they came through it and they were 2-0, they were twice behind. I hope we've done a lot for them. So, look, we've only got 11 games left of the season in the league and hopefully a few cup games. So there's not a lot of time left, and there's not going to be as many games at home. Maybe 5 or 6. So we're going to need that probably through all those games if we're going to get through and help the team over the line. So yeah, it was really encouraging that the lads did sort of power through even in adversity.
Yeah, and there's a part to that which I think speaks a lot about something we've been devoid of this season, which is character. So the manner of losing the goal to Leonard, where, as I say, that complete miscommunication between Fernandez and Raskin, respond really quickly, keep the pressure on, and we've hit the bar, but we're able to get. I'm certain the Deary would have finished that chance had Steinwender not sclaffed at it and put it into his own goal.
Yeah.
Then in the half-hour mark, I'm a bit disappointed, if I'm being honest with you, defensively in terms of what we do here. I think John Stuart has to do better, but I'm going to give massive credit to Claudia Braga. I think that he's definitely up there for player of the season, irrespective of whomever wins the league. I think Braga's been a brilliant signing for them. I urge and plead with all Hearts fans, sing his song a couple of times. Don't fucking sing it constantly because it was doing my head in. And I'm not like David. I don't mind Queen. David despises him, for him that doesn't know. But they're properly turning me off that band by singing that song
Yeah,
constantly.
I think the point you made there about Nadiri is interesting, and just in terms of the manager's approach. You hear, yeah, I've been quite frustrated for a number of years now in terms of how we approach league games, and maybe overthinking it in terms of the opposition, and overthinking it in terms of especially away games, and maybe playing an extra midfielder or whatnot. But the shout for 4-4-2 has always kind of, for me, been negated, that we don't really have the players that are going to kind of suit that. Sunday was the first time where I looked at both Nadiri and Chermiti and felt as though they could play together, and it worked. And we got up the pitch a lot quicker, and it put Hearts defenders on the back foot a bit more. So I was really encouraged by that. And I think, just talk about the atmosphere, I think that kind of maybe set the tone a wee bit with the fans. We've been at Ibrox on occasions, Cammy, when the teams have come out and we've all kind of slunk a wee bit and said, oh, Sunday wasn't like that. Sunday was quite really positive compared to the Motherwell game. So I think it was a positive in terms of how we started, and hopefully, I'm really hoping that is now, as I said, a blueprint the way forward. Because I do a show about the past years on the Patreon website, and we talk about Dick Advocat and Alex McLeish. We're currently doing Stephen Gerrard's reign at the moment, and it took Stephen Gerrard a while to actually take the shackles off a wee bit. And funnily enough, the season that he did, we won the league at a canter, when he would play a lot more attacking players rather than maybe two defensive midfielders. So I'm hoping that Danny Rowe has noticed that and has realised that, and takes that on board moving forward, because Hearts didn't look, I don't think, at any point really comfortable defensively. And I think that's because we exploited them with the quality we had rather than worrying too much about them.
Yeah, the pace is a great point because
Hmm.
I think, as we talk about Rangers teams, even as recently as this season, it's been slow build up. It's been, right, let's play a sideways pass and let's not take a risk and be able to do that. And I wonder, and listen, it's early days, but I'm exactly the same as you. I would like us to be able to see what we can do with getting the Deary and Chermiti playing together, because I think you're right. I think it sends out a signal of intent. I think it says to teams, no, you have to deal with us. It's not about us trying to accommodate you, whether we're home or away. It doesn't feel overly pragmatic or negative. And again, I know that's a strong term, but the reason why I use it, Stuart, is because I think if you then say we need to get the ball forward, because now we have two guys, albeit one will drop, right? We know that, uh, and to me, I'm going to give him his credit for this. I thought, was incredibly athletic on Sunday against Hearts. I thought he covered a lot of ground. He came back a lot. He did hold the ball up well. Um, but we know that we need to be able to get the ball forward. It's an absolute must because we need to feed these two guys. And it's almost like a challenge, if you will, to the middle line to say, you're not going to have the extra man in there. We're not going to be able to almost go into ourselves and go into some sort of introverted structure that means that you'll have support. You are going to have to deal with it. And then when you look at, you look at the goal against Motherwell as well, Mo Diamandi, absolutely tremendous, and Rascan further forward. You're putting the onus now on these guys. And whether or not you rotate that with Chukwani, Asgard, etc., but you're saying to them, you need to get forward with the balls. I've got wingers and I've got fullbacks now when you consider Romans who want to get forward with the ball, but you can't dilly-dally with it in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, for me, it's two things. One of them is link up play, and it might be simple, but for example, the first goal we scored between Romans and Mikey Moore, wonderful link up play, two players combining and having that relationship. I've seen it through the years with Barisic and Kent, and Tav and Candace, and all these sort of things. And you're right with the two strikers. And if I felt for a while that Chermiti would be better outside the box more. Funnily enough, the game that he plays a bit short, he comes short a lot and he scores 3 goals. But he's a handful. He is. You can tell he's a handful, and he is only 21. And I think I've been caught up in it with the fee and the performances and stuff, and he's probably been caught up in it as well, the lad. So it's about that. Also, another thing is as well about the pace. Rangers were doing something in the first 20 minutes at the weekend, and also we got caught out with the mix up between Fernandez and Raskin. But the defenders were holding on to the ball for just a wee bit, maybe too longer than we thought. But from where I was sitting in the Copeland rear, I could see that they were waiting for the space for somebody to run into the space, whether it be Mikey Moore or Scove Olsen, and they had to be a bit quicker doing that, the midfielders and the attackers. And there was times on Sunday when we were, turning the ball over and we were on Hearts really quickly, which is a lot better than what we have been doing, particularly at Ibrox in some games. So that was really encouraging for me. Of course, there's going to be moments where Fernandez or Suter or somebody are going to lose the ball. But and unfortunately Sunday we lost a goal from it. But a lot of the time we won't. I would rather just take those risks and get players into those forward positions and have more attacking bodies than have that extra midfielder, which it just doesn't. We've spoken about it so often. Having the three in midfield and even somebody like a Bayrami or an Asgard. There's a time and a place for it, but right now I just don't think it suits us, particularly getting into the latter part of the season with sort of 11 games to go. I think we need as much attacking, forward thinking and pacey players going forward. And also something we've missed for a long time, I think, is physicality. We look a lot like a bigger team now. People like Olsen and Chermiti and Nadiri are big guys compared to maybe before, where you've had players, with all due respect, like a Danilo, etc., who just didn't be able to cope with the league. So that for me is really encouraging going forward.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I think if I owed Chikwani a fiver, I would pay him promptly because that guy is an absolute tank.
Yeah,
And what I love about him as well, Stuart, and it sounds so basic, and I don't mean it to sound basic, but it's the physicality you mentioned. It's about saying, right, I'm not going to get bullied off the ball, and if you run into me, then you're going to bounce off me, and standing your ground and doing some of these things. And how many pods and how many times have we talked about it in our whole entire history of Heart and Hand? And it's not exclusive to us, by the way, because I know other pods talk about it, is the slightly more physical, industrial nature of Scottish football, that you do need to be strong. And I think we've seen plenty of guys, loads of clubs. I've seen plenty of guys coming up here thinking, well, if I'm faster or more intelligent, grand. But you try dealing with that when someone comes in and as I say, kicks you 3 foot up in the air. Chikwani doesn't look like that. I like Scovolson. I think that, as you say, um, he is tall. He does want to be able to get forward with the ball. But I think as well as that, when you look at our third goal to meet second, the accuracy of that cross for that header, the pace is perfect, the angle is perfect. If we can keep getting that out of him, we've got another real proper attacking threat there.
yeah. I think touching on Chukwani, I really, really like him. I think there was a stat put out during the week about how quick he wins the ball back, and you're right about the physicality. It's something just we've not had. If you go back through our midfielders for a number of years, somebody who you can actually depend on to go and win you the ball back, but not get bullied off it as well. And he looks like he's got quality on the ball to move forward and whatnot. And I'm delighted with him. In terms of Scov Olsen, um, I think I text maybe you guys during the match, and I said I think he's going to be one of these players that come the end of March, start April, that he will probably be in a proper rhythm, and you'll see the real version of himself as long as he stays fit and as long as he keeps playing. We're probably just going to need to get through these early spells where he might drift in and out, but I still thought he gave us something different. I thought he opened up a lot of space for Sterling. I thought Sterling was excellent. Um, and then if you're looking for moments, he created that moment for what was the winning goal. It was a wonderful cross. Chermiti was in a great position, and it's a great, it wasn't too much pace. How often have we seen Cammy Rangers players hitting overhit crosses to the back post and then they go away out? It was a perfect cross with his right foot. So um, I'll take, a 6, 7 out of 10 if it means he's given us an assist every game. I'll take that now. And in terms of the other signings, I think, Romans has caught everybody's eye. I think he looks like an absolute bargain for what he's been brought in for. I love the fact he's passionate. I see him getting stuck into a few Hearts players after a couple of the goals. Absolutely love that. You can just sense he feels the atmosphere and he feels the club, which is great. And the dairy for me has been excellent. What a step up from. I mean, coming from the third division of German football, and he's slotted right in. That's the best way I can describe him. I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but he really does remind me of similar a stature to Jelavic in terms of how he runs and how he holds the ball up and just being clever. And I think he'll be a fantastic player for us. So, I'm not getting ahead of myself. I know, got a long way to go in terms of the season and whatnot. But for me, it's very encouraging how the team is looking overall.
Yeah, I think I can't. I think you might have said they're the winning goal, but I'm assuming that you are not discounting JD Kasama's brilliant run for
Of
Chimate at the end.
course, of course. Listen, I'll 3-2 would have won us the game, right?
Right.
So we can
I
talk
get
about the
that. I
final
get that.
goal.
But the Gisama one I do want to touch on really quickly because I think that it kind of it dovetails onto your point there. Because and again, I will talk about that in just a second. But I'm a defender of JD Gisama. I think that he has been asked to do different roles, which can unsettle players. It's a very solid player who can be moved and still give us a 7, 8 out of 10 performance. Do you know what I mean? It's a difficult thing to do. Plus, he's had to play a lot of football. But the reason as to why I want to give him that compliment is because, as you rightly say, at 3-2, having come back twice from being a goal down, getting ahead, and then at this point, I thought, I mean, Hearts were still continuing to come forward, but I felt at this stage for an impact sub, which could be a future role for him, by the way. Um, Gisama was just so positive, getting the ball in his own half, being able to skin the Hearts player coming in, and then just a really intelligent crossfield ball to Chermiti, who, as I say, finished it beautifully. But the reason why I want to mention that is because we're going to have that dependency on some of these guys who have been here since the beginning of the season. They maybe aren't as they maybe haven't delivered as much as we would have liked, but they've also been available, so they've played a lot of games. But I think what's interesting about what you see now, Stuart, is my hope was that when we were approaching January, and I said at the time, people can go back and listen, that I felt of the three potential title candidates, whoever recruited best in the window gave themselves the best chance to set themselves up to succeed. Because Rangers had gaps. I think Celtic weren't really motoring, but they've obviously got a lot of disharmony at the moment. And as we've now seen, the difficulty as Hearts are finding with going on a season run to be able to compete at the highest level is that you're going to have injuries and you're going to have suspensions. And obviously, they've done well ish with the absence of Shankland and Devlin, who have obviously been key in terms of getting them to where they are at the moment. But the intake that we've had in January, I still exercise a lot of patience towards them. I'm not saying by any means that we are the finished team. We are not the finished article. There's still a long way to go. But when you think about those players who came in January, all of whom we've mentioned, it feels like they've given the whole team a lift. And that's
Mm.
also the benefit of strong recruitment. You bring in talent and it starts to, the talent levels rise within your existing group as well because players want to play better to keep up with that guy or that guy because you can see that, he's bringing something special.
Yeah, I think Kasama suffered a wee bit because he had such an impact when he the first couple of games against Panathinaikos, and he was the one that was kind of standing out within the shambles that was the Russell Martin era. So there was a lot of hope on him. Again, you're forgetting, with all due respect, there is a huge step up coming from Sheffield Wednesday to Rangers in the expectation, and he is 22. And also, and I've spoke to David and several or you guys about this before. Being a Rangers winger is one of the hardest roles in football because the expectations are just that you will be brilliant every single week, which is not possible. I think, to be fair to Kasama, and he will frustrate you at times. I don't like him on the right. I think we've all said that. Um, the goal, well, the impact it had on Sunday, for me, it was so important because there are going to be tight games between now and the end of the season when you need a bit of energy, and having that and having somebody coming on and being so positive to go and actually just get the win and not play it safe, not play a safe pass into midfield, but being very direct. And teams will open up at the end of the game if they're chasing it, and it could be so important. I was having visions when he took the ball of sort of Stephen Whittaker and Sporting Lisbon that he was just going to go himself, but thankfully he played a lovely pass after the great run and Chermiti put it away. So look, the squad's the squad, and nobody's leaving or coming in now, so it's going to be there, and I think he'll be very important between now and the end of the season. I think that if the squad is sort of as it is, he probably will have more of an impact coming from the bench. Which his age and the amount of games as you mentioned, he's played most of the games, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I think it'd be great, and you don't really want to face him. And I think going back to it as well, if I recall, the two games that he had the impact right at the start of the season against Panathinaikos, he came off the bench in them. So look, if that's the best way to utilise him, then ideal, because that's what we've kind of always wanted. You see the strength of sort of Diomande and Gassama coming on for the bench. That's what an improving the first team's all about. Players that were playing in the first team that are now on the bench still coming on making an impact. That's why your recruitment has to be spot on, and bringing in Olsen and Chukwuani just adds to that. So, listen, fair play to him. You're right about the recruitment of the side. Celtic have obviously improved. They couldn't have get any worse, through what they were doing in December. Hearts, I think, will miss Lawrence Shanklin big time. They are missing him big time. He's their focal point, and he's their best player. And I think the rumours that they'll be back at sort of the end of March. It's still a long time away. So I've been pretty consistent. I think it will go down to the last few games, which does seem, not that long away, but in another sense, it does seem quite a long while away. So we just need to really, as basic as it sounds, is just focus on the next game and use the fact that we've not got any European football. Use the fact that we've not got anything else to focus on other than a one game a week, and hopefully the squad are preparing for that and using that to the best of their ability.
Yeah, one of the questions I asked Adam, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this as well, albeit we've obviously now had the Hearts game, was whether or not this squad believed that it could win the league.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked Adam that question last week was obviously we were sandwiched in between Fir Park and the Hearts game. Because it was a bit response, and we've touched on that. And I think that the response has been entirely positive from the playing group. I think that Danny Rule has always shown that he's happy with the consistency that he's been able to bring in, and the obvious, stratospheric improvement that he's brought into this group. But he's also looked frustrated at times, and you've seen him in the flesh, Stuart. When we've had the opportunity to be at press conferences and stuff, and there's been times where I think I've seen him with the body language, and you can tell, at half time, if we're not playing well, Kilmarnock, a good example, I think, where he's not happy at where things are at, and it's almost as if he's probably had a bit of an inner monologue to say, "There's pieces here that I need. There's some gaps that I need to be able to try and fill." The board have completely backed him in January, and so I think he's now starting to feel that he's been able to get the semblance of a tune out of this squad. Now he's getting a little bit more like, the full orchestra.
Yeah.
Because for me, the reason as to why Sunday was really, really important, and why it was such a great performance and a great result and a great day overall for us, from being able to come back from those 2 goals, then take the lead, and then, seal the deal, was I need the players to believe that they can do this. And that's why, and you touched on it earlier, and I don't want to forget this, by the way, because I thought it was excellent as well. That's why I love the Romans celebration,
Yeah.
because I love the fact that he's turning and going, he could come in here now, they all could, when they came in January, and go, well, we'll see what's happening. We're not in the driving position at the moment to win the league. So we'll see what goes on, and maybe we just bleed it through until the summer. There'll be changes in the squad, and then we go again at next season. Romans has come in now certainly from the way he's acting, saying absolutely not. We are challenging, and there is very, very much some silverware at the end of this that we can attain.
Yeah, I think there's a fear and a reluctance from anybody, including myself, to totally commit to say about we are going for this, because you can't really, discount the fact that we went into the last weekend of October when Danny Rowe came in with, I think it was 8 points from 9 games. And I remember conversations where we were discussing possible issues getting top 6. That's where we were, and that's the reality. That's not trying to make things sound worse than they were. That's the reality. And he walked into a squad that was, let's be honest, all the players were on the floor. Like, they had no confidence. They had no. I remember that game against Dundee United when we were in between managers, and it was one of the lowest I felt, because I just thought, this is just another season down the toilet. So the job that he's done, galvanising the players, organising them, getting some confidence into them, has been brilliant. It really has, to put us in this place. And of course, things have had to fall in terms of Celtic going on a bad run and Hearts maybe dropping some points. But to put us in this place, I think there's maybe a wee bit of a reluctance, and I hope Sunday gives the players that belief that and gives them an insight into what it could properly be like. You've seen the celebrations at the end of the game between the players and the fans, and I was so happy that the players got to come down to the Copeland Road, for example, in front of the Union Bears, because it took a lot of stick at the start of the season, and rightly so. There was a lot of horrible days when they were getting booed off the pitch by the whole stadium, and they could experience the flip side of that. But I think it's weird because I was speaking to a few people last week. I was more concerned about playing Motherwell than I was playing Hearts at home, and I hope that one of the things that only concerns me is that sometimes we've got a tendency to maybe drop our level to sort of the opposition we're playing and maybe raise our level. And by what I mean by that is I would rather us have 11 big games of the season left, and we're going to talk about Livingston away. It could be viewed Livingston away. We're playing bottom of the table. We should be okay. We can't go with that attitude. The fans certainly won't. The fans will be there in their numbers and singing for the start. The players need to realise that we can't afford any slip ups. We can't afford to down our performance levels. We've got to go at it for the first minute, and otherwise we'll get caught. That's just the reality, because and there's probably, I don't think, going to be a lot of room for error between now and May. So for me, I hope the players just have that same feeling now. We've had a couple of blips at Easter Road. We've had a blip at Motherwell. Okay, that happens, but we've now had a big, huge result, and it's about really going and pressurising other teams. And look, anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's so difficult for me to sit here after, as I said to you, August, September, October, and how bad that was to in the same season be talking about, we're 11 games away from winning a title. So I just hope the players have kind of pushed all the negativity out the way, and they're focused on what could be, quite a remarkable league win.
Yeah, 100%. And I
Yeah.
think you say the turnaround from Danny Rule, as you mentioned there, is absolutely phenomenal. If either us or Hearts win the league, I genuinely believe this, and I caveat this by saying that, assuming that we don't win the league, I think Denny McInnes wins Manager of the Year.
Hmm.
I think Danny Rule would absolutely deserve his place in that conversation to be able to do the turnaround that he's done. And I think that that's not me panicking or doing anything else as well, but I think it complements what would be a phenomenal achievement, I think, in world football if Hearts were to break the Old Firm dominance, but equally at the same point, for Danny Rule to be able to come in and achieve what he's achieved, as you say, since October. So what we on now, mid-February, so we're
Yeah.
5 months ish down the line. Then again, it's been nothing short of
I,
miraculous.
I, I I think for me with Danny Role, and look, I'm not going ahead of myself, because I actually do, but I actually do think for the first time in a number of years that regardless of what happens, unless there's a catastrophic drop off between now and May, I think the club are absolutely behind him, and I think they will keep going. I don't think it'll be a case of rip it all up and start again come the summer.
Oh,
Um,
not at all. No, no, they're a
he
million percent behind them.
he when look, let's be honest. If the board could have got Steven Gerrard back in October, they would have done it right away. And fair enough, the pressure at that point from the fans and from everybody outside, and obviously after that broke down, Danny Rowe kind of got the job by default. And I remember thinking to myself, that takes a man with big shoes to walk in there after the disaster of the season we're having, because he was not hiding to nothing. Let's be honest, he was not hiding to nothing with the squad we had. He has done a fantastic job of getting confidence back into those players. You very rarely see it, and I recall when Michael Beale came in. Michael Beale, I think, mentioned throughout his whole first season back, when he came in mid-season, we need to get to pre-season, we need to get to pre-season, and just to sort of like to buy yourself time. Danny Rowe's been at it since day one and has been trying to improve us. And you've seen that the levels of some of the players from where they were. Chermiti, Fernandez, Diomande has improved. I don't think any players not got a bit better since he came in. So like fair play, maybe Miovski, let's be honest. He's done a great job, and I just hope that he gets a bit of the rub of the green between now and the end of the season, because if we can take it into the next couple of weeks, then we could really, really kick on.
Yeah, that's fair, and I think that kind of leans into what I was saying earlier on about the kind of body language aspect of it. Because Danny Rule could have walked in, he could have walked in after Russell Martin and went, the group's completely fractured.
Exactly.
I need signings because some of the guys you bought already are pish, and therefore I need to be able to improve upon it. And what he's done, as you rightly say, is with those ones who struggled at the start of the season coming into Rangers, he's worked on them. He's been able to try and get them that way. And whether or not you're talking about an improvement of 1% or 15% or whatever, he's been able to get something out of pretty much all of them. That to me is not a manager who walks into a job and goes, do you know what, I'll coast through the rest of the season, do what we can with it, and then I'll properly get my teeth into it in the summer when I've had the opportunity to get at least 2 windows under my belt. He hasn't looked like that whatsoever. So
I think
that's why sometimes the first choice isn't the right choice. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. And I think some people forget, and it's been actually at the weekend there was a lot made on Sky Sports of the coverage of Scottish football and how good the sort of 2 games back to back were in the atmosphere at Ibrox. Some people can't cope with it. That's the truth. And we've had a great example this season of Joe Rothwell, for example. I think Joe Rothwell was a good football player, did well down in England with Leeds. I'm pretty sure he'll do okay with Sheffield United. Couldn't handle the pressure of your football club and the expectation of winning every week, of turning up every week. And some players thrive in it, some players don't. And I think Danny Rowe, for me, like Russell Martin was never going to thrive in it as manager of Rangers. I think Danny Rowe loves it. I think he absolutely loves the pressure and the expectation. And he will make mistakes. And we all criticised him last Wednesday at Fir Park because he is still in his own, way, a young manager. So he's not going to get everything right. But listen, there's no question. I think absolutely everybody's absolutely behind him, and the Rangers fans. There's no, dissenting voices about him. Of course, there'll be disappointment at disappointing results, but the unity I feel with the fans and the players is a million miles away from where it was at the start of the season when it couldn't have been further away, if you know what I mean. So that in itself is a job that he's done really well. With notwithstanding the improvement to the team.
Yeah, that's totally true. It's totally true. And um, again, like you say, I think that he knows that we can really get our teeth into this, but it's going to take hard work and the resilience which I think he's brought back into him, because I don't see that group of players who have been here since the start of the season looking like victims any longer, and I think they looked a lot like victims, especially under the previous manager. But Stuart, let's wrap up by talking about this Sunday's game away to. I was going to say Almondvale, and then I was going to call it the Tony Macaroni Arena or the Spaghetti Ads. I can't remember what it's called now. I think it's like the Set Fair Arena or some
Yeah.
nonsense. However, we've got Livingston, and one of the reasons, Stuart, as to why I despise the split that we have is because I'm always wary about and you and I have both seen it, where you can go into games towards the very tail end of the season against teams who are close to. I mean, they're fighting relegation. They could be close to being relegated, and sometimes, it's the beast that bites you back,
Hmm.
because Livy won't. Livy are scrambling for every single point they can get now. They were very unlucky not to get something from Parkhead. Obviously, there has been changes with Martindale taking a director of football, sporting director job. Marvin Bartley's obviously now manager. We'll do the obligatory chat about the pitch because it's terrible. But all of that to one side, all of that noise to one side, Rangers, how we start this game for me is what we were talking about before, is that signal of intent. I think right now, injuries aside and, some good fortune, Danny Rule has got about 11 games to make sure that he plays his absolute best side, and every opportunity he has to do that on Sunday.
Yeah, I think the time for sort of letting players breathe or, resting their minutes and stuff, maybe apart from Sterling, who I would manage, but other than that, I think he's got to go with pretty much what he went with on Sunday. As I mentioned earlier on, there can't be any let up, there can't be any, well, we've got Celtic next week. We've got no excuses of European football or a game midweek. We just need to get the best players on the pitch and we need to go and win the points. You're right about Livingston. They have improved under Marvin Bartley in terms of, I think, the performances and shown a bit more fight. They've made a couple of signings, but we need to go there and just put the game to bed. You get a great allocation at Livingston. It feels like a bit like a mini home game, and we've just got to go and use that and get it out of the way, because it's important. It's so important that we go in there with that right attitude. It sets us up for the following game, which we all know is Celtic, and that game takes care of itself. But as I said, sitting here right now, I'm more comfortable talking about going home to Celtic than I am going to Livingston, and it's just purely because of that wariness that we do drop down to their level a wee bit and get caught up and start slow, and then we're chasing ourselves. So that's something that I think the team have got to improve on, because they've not got a great away record over the past couple of months. So they've got a no better opportunity to go and play the team that are bottom of the league, who are, let's be honest, going to get relegated. So on the players, on the manager, go get the win, get it early, send the fans home happy, and then we can prepare for the big one. That's pretty much it.
And theoretically, if Hearts lose to Falkirk
Hmm.
and we win,
Hmm.
it's top of the table time.
Well, that's the thing. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Hearts do react, obviously, to. Um, it's weird. It's a strange one because there still doesn't seem to be that huge amount of pressure on them, even though they're at the top of the league. And I suppose they'll probably be happy with that. I think it wouldn't really, until maybe the split, until people, if they were top of the league at that point, you'd maybe start really thinking that they'll do it. But yeah, listen, we can only, as I said, focus on ourselves. Hearts will know that one of ourselves or Celtic are going to drop points the following weekend, or both of us. So they'll be doing their utmost to win. But um, we couldn't, let's be honest, we couldn't really have asked for a better away game, if we're being honest, playing bottom of the league. We've obviously been to Motherwell and Aberdeen and Hibs recently. So I just hope the players have got that same mentality they had on Sunday, because that's been a little bit of an Achilles heel for the club for a number of years now, is getting up for whether it's big European games or big league games and then dropping the levels and not performing and keeping us ruining our Sunday afternoon, Cammy, as we're sitting on edge. So I just hope that they go in with the right attitude, and then, as I said, momentum builds, and before you know it, you're getting into games full of confidence.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in Amsterdam on Sunday, Stuart. So, I mean, I don't condone drug use, but over there it's
Uh-huh.
legal. I want to make sure that Rangers don't send me into a coffee shop.
Well, there we go. There we go. I hope the Bears at Almondvale or whatever it's called have more fun than you will in Amsterdam. But I'm not. I'm not sure. So they will. Maybe at 45, we'll see what the final result is.
I hope so. But and you touched on this earlier on, and it's a brilliant point, Stuart. It's why you're not on this podcast enough. Is the mentality has to be a constant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about the venue. It doesn't matter about the opposition. It's about intent. You have to be able to go out now and you summed up perfectly. Don't sink to their level. You need to make them rise to yours. And if
Hmm.
you play well and you get that rhythm, and you see what we did at Ibrox last Sunday, and again, you're right. We are very fortunate with the away allocation at Livingston because they're one of the very few sensible clubs in the league. You've got three stands of away support absolutely right beside you to be able to make sure that we get a performance that we know this team can produce, but we are not in a position any longer, Stuart, to pick and choose when we execute that performance. It has to be a constant now.
Yeah, and that's what the best teams do, and that's what wins your leagues. I think now is the time. We've had a lot of different stages of this season. I think now's the time that one team's going to go and really attack the league in terms of going out and battering through. Because if we go 3-0 up at half time, for example, that sends a message to the teams in the league. That sends a message that, right, Rangers actually mean business now. Um, you mentioned, worry about the pitch or worry about, if they've improved. I think we need to remember that we need to make sure other teams are worrying about us and thinking about our good players. Other teams should be thinking about Yusuf Chermiti now. Right, he's going to go on a run now. And that's kind of the attitude that has to go on. We did it in the league winning season under Gerrard. We were going to away games and we were battering teams in the first half and they couldn't get out. So if we're going to go and do it, and I really hope we do, it needs to start at Sunday. There needs to be the start, and we just need to kick on and move forward. Because other than that, and the thing is, with the where we are in the season now, every game becomes huge. There's no games that are kind of free games or games that will be forgotten at the end of the season. They'll all matter. This just has to be another one knocked off the list.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. What is interesting as you talk about striking options, I would play Chermiti against Celtic in league, but I would play Majovski against Celtic in the cup because he seems to love the Scottish Cup. So yeah, I jest, I jest. We will talk about that Old Firm double header in due course. But David will be back with you on Monday to unpack the Livingston game and hopefully talking about a great performance from Rangers and most importantly 3 points in the bag. If you'd like to hear more from us, and I do want to give this show a plug, by the way, because legitimately, and I'm not saying this because he's joined me this week, but the manager review, the season review show, the Stuart, David and Rob do is brilliant, brilliant listening. A proper deep dive into the archive, taking game by game across a multitude of managers. The boys are just talking about Steven Gerrard now, but as you said, Stuart, you go back a lot further than that. It's an excellent show. No one reads a team sheet like Stuart McCall. That's what I will say. That alone is worth 3 measly quid a month, as far as I'm concerned, much less alongside all the other great content.
I've read every team sheet from 1998, and trust me, going from Giovanni Van Bronckhorst and George Alberts to Ian Black and Francisco Sandaza has been a journey. But yeah, it is. It's good. It's all there in the archive shows. We're currently going over January 2021 right now, which is round about Celtic going to Dubai and us moving towards 55. So it's very enjoyable. So yes, please give it a listen and go and reminisce over the years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Dubai. That was just a great time. I was listening to it the other week when you boys were talking about the Neil Lennon press conference, and it actually made me go back and watch it just for the lols. Great times, absolutely great times. Listen, thank you to our producers, Mike Lee, Paul Myers. Thank you to you all for listening. As I say, David will be back with you on Monday, but head on over to patreon.com/heart and hand if you'd like even more content that you can shake a stick at. But my biggest thanks, and I say this most weeks, this week I legitimately 100% from the bottom of my heart mean it. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on. You're an excellent guest, mate, and I'm sorry, but I want us to make a commitment to this more frequently going forward.
A pleasure, mate. And if we end up getting results over the next few weeks, and it's a good omen, then I'll maybe make a point of coming on more because I'm quite superstitious that way. So, no, listen, a pleasure, mate, and thank you for having me on.
Cool. Thanks everyone for listening. Rangers, get to Livingston, get the result, and ideally let's get top of the table if we can. Thanks all for listening. We'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.